this way.
Forest'ın çok
So, welcome. The Ancient Theatre of Taormina. Let's start with the name. It is quite important because they say here, we say, but it's not technically correct. Because I'm sorry, at this point here, there is nothing of Greek anymore. It was a Greek theatre, as you can see. This was a name, the name of Philistus. Other names which are not that usual as that one. And that was a private seat, or that was a throne seat. It was the first private seat of the theatre, reserved for authority, VIP, important person. And that would make us take the theatre at the 3rd century before Christ. It during that age because Philistus was the wife of Hieron II, the last tyrant in Syracuse. At the 3rd century before Christ, Taormina was under the domination of Syracuse, and the theatre of Syracuse has the same name, with the name of the husband, son. But if there, we can be sure, right? Because there are all these names, so we know it's that family, we know when they lived. Here, we cannot be sure 100% this is the same Philistus. Okay, so 3rd century before Christ, really probable, but we cannot be sure. What is really sure is that in the 3rd century before Christ, Romans conquered Sicily. They were using theatre of saints, and little by little, literally, they replaced all structures. The only part of the Greek theatre that we still have is the base of that wall. You can see big blocks, that is our bricks that we're building. Bricks are rolling. So you can see here is everything. Okay? This way. And to be more precise, the ruins that we see today refer to a big monumentalization that Romans did during the 2nd, 3rd century AD. When we were at the highest point of the Roman Empire, when all the Mediterranean was closed into the border of the Roman Empire, and they liked it to show who they were. So they moved, the architecture was one of the ways. Again, there is a beautiful video, but it's not working, so we have to make it with this picture. You can see they monumentalized the theatre with scenery of 3 levels, completely covered on marbles. Marbles coming from all the Mediterranean, from Italy as well as from Tunisia, Greece, Turkey. The marble was the fanciest and most important material, was the one that they were using to show off, to show who they were. And we have to contextualize it, you know. In ancient time, to import marble from Turkey was like we import today from Argentina, you know, to shape it in these beautiful decoration columns, to carve those big blocks, in general, to build marble structures was a really big exhibition of power and richness. Okay? They like it to show off, as I say. They like it to show who was the boss and what they were able to do. Clear? Questions? No. Perfect. Come with me. Today is perfect, even because there are not so much structures on the stage. Today there is the candlelight concerts. They're really beautiful, but often they be covered by scenographers for the show. We still use for concerts in Syracuse, where there is a bigger theater, not so beautiful like this. There is not that much anymore, even less. They use it for a really famous thing, the Dionysiac, the Dionysius celebration. They still do it. Greek tragedies in a Greek theater, because not too many people know that the Greek drama, developed from the Dionysius celebrations. Dionysius, not just the god of the wine, as it is well known for, but is the god of art, theater, creativity, the eccentricity, irrationality, etc., etc. That was a really loved god, even because his celebrations were real parties. So they were before the big theater, when there was not a theater around. They were here in this area that today we call the orchestra. That in all Greek means to dance. Here they were dancing. They were dancing around an altar in mystic ecstasies, thanks to the holy drink that Dionysius gave to the humans to connect with the god, the wine, and probably not just because of the wine, yeah, they were improvising songs that slowly centuries got structured as theater. The Greek drama that we still know, and that became something important, really important for the Greeks. It was not just entertainment, it was part of their education. Everyone had to go to the theater to see the drama, because it was one of the places where they were learning to be Greek. That's why it's so big. There is not a Greek city without a theater, okay? This was for 7,000 persons. That was more or less the entire population of Taormina. The theater in Syracuse, that was a much bigger city, was for almost 20,000 people. With Romans, everything changed. Romans loved the Greeks. They imitated them, they idealized them. Many of the things that we know of the Greeks arrived to us through the Romans. We don't have the original of many of the Greek art masterpieces. We have the Roman replications. So Romans wanted to be wanted to come from the Greeks. They invented an old mythology to be the relatives of the Greeks. But the theater was a bit too much for them, especially the drama. Comedy was still fine. But the Greek drama, it became something for few people, for an elite, not for all people like it was in the Greek society. For the rest of people, as Nerone, the emperor, liked to say, panem and circenses, food and fun. This is what an emperor gives to people to make them happy. And fun in the emperor age, when the theater was modified by the Romans, was gladiators. So, I remind you, 3 levels as we saw in the picture. This is just one. It was big, high, and really overwhelming decorated with marble. But it was even changed completely to be a place for gladiators, for fighters. What they did, they removed the stage. They didn't need anymore. They could do something temporary as we do. And when we take apart this, you can see here an underground room that is somewhere connected with the back of the theater. You can see somewhere the animals were introduced here in the structure. And they removed all the first line of sticks of the cavea to make that vertical wall in order to protect the public. If in a Greek theater there is always a cavea, an orchestra, an instrument, here there is not an orchestra anymore. This is an arena, like in an amphitheater, which are two different things. The amphitheaters, this is important, because here this is all Roman. There is an arena that is still a theater, still the layout of a theater, which means a semicircular shape around the stage. Roman, it was invented by Greeks for actors, and you have to stay in the front of the actors to see them. Doesn't matter from where you see gladiators. So the Romans were doing amphitheater, stadium. Amphi means double, a double theater. Two theaters like this joined to make a rounded shape. Okay, that is technically, that is an amphitheater. This, as I told you, is all Roman, was used as an amphitheater, but the layout is still the one of a typical Greek. Okay? Let's go in the shape. So, let's wait for the other. In 476, indeed, the Western Roman Empire collapsed, and this structure this structure became they were abandoned, they were not used anymore. Why reuse all those beautiful marbles that were there before they got broken? We are a seismic area when we take apart all these things, dressing rooms here, the stage, seats, for the concert, is an open-air museum of broken cabins, as you can see down here. So they took the best away, the Belito, reused in other places. Taormina is full of the pieces of the theatre. The best example, here there are hotels with wonderful ancient marble decorations. But the best example, of course, in public places, churches, of course. The main church of Taormina, the Duomo, almost on the other side of the town, is the columns inside here. They were probably, instead of those columns, come. We didn't want to destroy the colleague. Those columns, which are, that is an archaeological mistake. I mean, it is, they are original from the theater, but they are not in the right place. In the 1800s, when they were raised up there, the archaeology was not that precise as today. And as we know, they were higher levels. Still, because I remember, 3 levels. This is just the first, as we saw in the video. Not just the theater, not just the pieces of the theater, but the theater itself was reused. We have documents from 1400s, but probably even before, where we are right now, and in the other court area where we were, it became a private house. Taormina allowed a wealthy local family to build inside the theater with the condition to not change the original structure. Of course, you live in a place, you need some windows. You need the holes for the wooden beams, to adapt the structure to the private home. But in general, let's say that if we still have so quite well preserved structures, is even because they were reused and then maintained. This was in the theater, they were the versure, which were the parts from where the choir could get straight on the stage. The actors were going from that way, backstage, and then on the stage through the arcs the so-called Hospitalia. Here we have two arcs, literal arc. There was one bigger at the center that collapsed in medieval time because of an earthquake. Sounds strange, but it made the fortune of Taormina, and we will see it from the top when we see the view. Come with me. Are you going to Mount Etna?
No.
Yes.
It's good training though.
It's the right moment to do it. He's active. Tourists want always to see lava. This is the right moment.
But that's the
Up
one,
here,
isn't it?
slowly up here. Sorry?
That's Etna, right?
Yes. And you can see the line of
Yeah.
smoke. That is the smoke from the volcano. Pictures are better from here. If you want to stay in the shade here, you can. This down that you see down here is Giardini Naxos. Naxos is a Greek name. There is still the island of Naxos in Greece. And from there originally came the first Greeks that founded the first Greek colony in Sicily. Naxos, founded in 734 before Christ by people coming from Naxos. It was part of this. It was the beginning in Sicily of the so-called Apoikia, which literally means far from home. It was a big immigration. It was the 8th, 7th century before Christ. That is called the Greek Renaissance, when Greece became the culture that we study at school, when they invented the rational thought, the philosophy, the mathematics, etc. And there was a general improving of the life conditions, a rising of the economy of the population. They became too many for the lands they had. So they invited the Ansarbo to move, to look for their fortune in somewhere else. Naxos here was the first, but 1 year later was founded Syracuse, and Catania, Messina, Gela, Agrigento. See, the central eastern part of Sicily became Greece. And it was not a colony as we mean it today. Greeks were particular. They were not an empire, they were not a kingdom, they were not controlling. They wanted to stay small. Free city, completely independent, city-states. Okay? But yeah, they were keeping a good relationship with the motherland, the mother cities, and sometimes they were helping each other in case of war, and they were fighting a lot each other actually to conquer more natural sources. It's really famous big war that there was in the Greek world between Athens and Sparta, the Peloponnesian War, the biggest war in the Greek world. All the Greek cities were involved, including the Sicilian cities. Syracuse, that in 3 centuries became the biggest of the Sicilian cities and one of the biggest of the Mediterranean cities, you know, really rich and powerful. They were with Sparta. And Athens soon realized that if they wanted to defeat Sparta, they had first to stop the Alps coming from Syracuse. So they came here, helped by Naxos that was on their side. They landed, they attacked Syracuse, and it was a huge disaster. No one came back with this. The entire army and the entire navy were completely destroyed. And when Syracuse solved the problem with Etna, they didn't forget about Naxos, that helped their enemies. To let them understand that they didn't appreciate that much what they did, that they just burned the city to the ground. In the archaeological site, where there are just the foundational buildings, there are still visible the sign of the fire in the buildings. The survivors moved. They founded a new city, this time in a more protected location. Taormina, they call it. Taormina. Okay. It was founded around 396 BC in a really great location that if we go a bit higher, we see even better. Well, up here.
I don't know if that's of lantern after the away. In Turkey, the mayor of Taormina, you can see every part of the
And the acoustic is much better.
relatives.
Even if it's numbers, it was because of a concert where there were not numbers. Okay. But they will tell you. And so,
a tower with a clock.
this was, as I told you, Taormina was the original name of Taormina. That literally means the city on Mount Taor. Still the name of this mountain. It was built on a beautiful terrace. We are going there in a few minutes. The beautiful terrace.
That tower is one of the gates.
A beautiful terrace with vertical scarps on the seaside, and a crown of wheels protecting the city from the back. Taormina was really fortified in a really strategic location. Because today we make tunnels. At that time, if you wanted to go around Greco, you had no way to avoid Taormina. You had to go through Taormina if you didn't want to go all around the mountain. So Taormina, in fact, became really important for the Romans as a town to control this area. Because Umberto, the main road of Taormina, was part of the Via Pompeia, that was the highway along the coast. In fact, a few centuries over, when it was more revitalized, Taormina became a military core. That's why probably they changed the theatre to be an amphitheatre. Gladiators were more appropriate for soldiers, for military guys. The hotel that you see when you come to the theatre, that is the first hotel of Taormina. It was opened in 1840, more or less, really old. A few decades later arrived the Four Seasons. that was an ancient convent. Is that big structure with the bell tower that we see at the end on the extreme left side of the town. Those two blocks. These two are the most important hotels of Taormina, the most ancient. 1800s, and this just to show you how Taormina is old in tourism. And everything because of this theater. But now I'll tell you more. Another thing that we can see from here, up here, that those trees that you see down there is the public garden of Taormina. Public garden that is, it was a private garden built by British lady lived here in 1800, Florence Trevelyan, far cousin of the Queen Elizabeth, and by the Queen Elizabeth
¿Por dónde quiere ir ahora?
Actually, she was part of the royal family, so she was loved. They gave her quite good salary for the life, to enjoy her life far away, where she couldn't distract the future King Edward that was already promised.
For Instagram is very good.
That was mentioned why they were sent. She built a beautiful garden with her husband, her local husband, the mayor of Taormina. They built the Isola Bella. She had a good life here. In 1800, still because of the theater, there was a quite big community of British, mainly British and German, but not just them. Taormina was already, Taormina is 2 centuries that is a tourist location. It's not just something recent, and everything because of the theater. Now I will tell you more. This way.
To jest takie starsze, możesz się odsunąć? Nie, z takiego dużego bardziej, żeby było widać też ten. Zrób na jedynce albo na dwójce, tak żeby było też wodę. O, widzisz?
To jest bardzo dużo ludzi, tak?
I guess we could get it on the way down there.
Yesterday it was so beautiful. Today there is this breeze that is quite nice. This where we are walking right now was the big entrance, monumental entrance made by Romans. Come this way. 5 minutes and we finish. It is a beautiful place to stay. This is just a small portion that we rebuilt in 1955 with the last restorations, when their restorations were still propositive restorations, when they were still rebuilding. Today we just preserve what we find. But even at that time they were leaving the difference, they were marking the difference between the original bricks that you see in relief and the copies. These are made with the same material, same technique. Yeah, but 70 years old, a bit more, almost 2000. The others. The brick was the most important technological revolution that Romans brought down here. It's thanks to the bricks that they were able to do structure that Greeks couldn't. Arches, especially. The big blocks that Greeks were using, they couldn't carve faces. They couldn't make rounded corners. If you think the Greek temple is square, Okay, they couldn't build theater. This is another big difference between a Roman amphitheater and a Greek theater. Greek theaters are not built; they are carved in the hills. They are excavated. They needed a hill where to shape the theater. Romans were building where they could, thanks to the architects, where the way they could build construction or the most structure, the hill going up, and they would sound the amphitheater. Here there is nothing like that. Here there is a wonderful view of the continent of Italy, of the mainland. Madam, here is better. Come here. This is something pretty common in Sicily. Many of the plants, as well as the architecture, even the plants, the food, and everything. I say that Sicily is like a lasagna, you know? Different layers over time. Tree clippers were imported by Spanish from Mexico. And not from here, but here they found a perfect natural environment. As well as lemons, oranges that we are famous for, they were imported here by Arabs, as well as pistachio, etc., etc. The only three plants that we know are here, since men are here, are grapes, olive, and wheat. Bread, olive oil, and wine. This we call the Mediterranean Trinity. And yeah, that is Italy. Yeah, the mainland. We are Italy too. Yeah. Even if we often forget. No, but when we cross the street, it's quite funny. When we cross the street with the ferry, when we land in Calabria, there is the sign, "Welcome to Italy."
How long is the ferry?
It's half an hour. It's 2.4 miles. It's really short the distance. It's since the Romans probably that we discussed of making a bridge. The problem is that it's quite hard because it's a really deep area, so it has to be suspended, and it's a really seismic area. In 1908, Messina, 80,000 people died, was completely destroyed by an earthquake, as well as we are like California, we wait for the big ones. In 1693, there was another big earthquake that destroyed all the southeastern Sicily. As well as an earthquake, here they are really frequent. I told you, the scene collapsed, the central part of the scene. Now we will go to enjoy. First, I explain here in the shade, the scene we go to enjoy. Is that sort of window in the structure that makes the view just one thing with the structure. And is what amazed the famous guy, sorry my German pronunciation, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, that came here in May 1789, the end of a big journey all along Italy to see the Greco-Roman ruins, the Italian journey. It became the book titled The Italian Journey, the diary of this journey, became bestseller. He was an influencer, probably the first influencer for Sicily. He arrived here, he's seated at the top of this cavea, and he said that this view was the greatest combination of art and nature that he had never seen. Now, if I would say something like that, no one would care, but it was good. It was the most important intellectual of Europe of the last century, the most important at the time. Sicily became famous, and especially Taormina. All the other travelers of the Grand Tours that became trending in the 1800s to come to Italy and to travel all along the country to see the Greco-Roman ruins, they started to include Sicily and especially Taormina This view got viral in the social media of that time. Paintings. Now I know many paintings there are of this view that became really famous. So when tours started, when people were suggested by doctors to go to spend the winter in a warm, gentle climate, to take care of their health, Taormina became one of the options. Like Venice, like Florence, like Rome. But Taormina was really far in a land at the borders, at the limits of the civilized world, you know. It was, sounds funny today, but it was like that. Sicily was considered the door of the hell because of the volcanoes that we have. In the Catholic tradition, the doors of the hell, you were going to the hell from here. You wanted to send someone to the hell, you had to send him to Sicily at the time. So it was really an exotic land. It is what the Bohemian, the artists, were looking for. Taormina became a sort of Ibiza, a party place for Bohemians, for artists, for painters, for writers, or for people that had to go far, where no one cared about them, like Florence Trevelyan, like the homosexuals that were persecuted in Germany and UK. Oscar Wilde was here for months. There is still an house, the Casa Cuseni, considered one of the most beautiful old villas of Taormina. It was of an homosexual that lived here with his boyfriend here, the local. As well as Taormina was made famous by von Gleden through pictures. He invented here the naked male photography, taking pictures of young naked boys close to ruins. I say that became a sort of Ibiza of the 1800s. This fame will arrive until the 50s, the 60s, La Dolce Vita, the cinema stars, Francis Ford Coppola, Greta Garbo, Ingrid Bergman, Marcello Mastroianni, etc., etc. If you go to the main road, there is still the Mocambo. Today is the bar boutique of Dolce Gabbana. It's a couple of years they bought and they changed it completely. But there is still a wall painting made in the 60s titled "Let's Start a Party." It's like a picture of a party in that place with at the center of the owner that was a gigolo. That was the time when Taormina was defined by an American journalist the Disneyland of dreams and scenes. Unfortunately, just to know, the party is over, not anymore. But all these stories just to let you understand that if Taormina is Taormina, if it's 200 years almost that we make tourism here, it's because of this view. This view made Taormina famous. Let's go to enjoy it.
What story on that? You said it's 3 stories, so how, what story?
3 stories there. This was, by the way, on this side, the top point. Yeah. But no, be careful to the steps here. You can sit for a couple of minutes if it's not too hot to sit. But in general, it's better if you stay here so you are not disturbed by people passing. Down there. Down here, no, that steps or these steps, they are more or less the same. Or this way, or in at any level in the direction you meet the stairs to come back where we started. Okay. Okay. Just few minutes and we are done. We wait for the others. There are questions meanwhile?
I would have one. You mentioned at the start that the Romans pretty much tried to remove most of the Greek architecture. Why would they do that? Because in the end they inherited
No,
90%
because
of
the Greeks architecture, at least in general, the Greek architecture was really simple, you know. They didn't need that much. Actually, if they built the theater here, is what I was going to say, is right because of this view, is what all they needed. They didn't want to cover it like the Romans did. They didn't need to be huge architectures, especially in the theater. The view in the background was enough. So basically, the Romans added all of their decorations, including these. They changed it completely. For the Greeks, the theater were really, really simple. They were a carved hill with a view. And a stage. That's it.
So until everything kind of fell apart, you wouldn't have been able to see
No,
this view.
not in Roman age. No. Because there were 2 more stories and everything was high like that part all around. So no view. The Romans didn't care about the view at all. Instead, the Greeks, yes, that's why the theater is here. Even because otherwise, all the Greek theater, they are oriented to the east. So the sun is not in front of you. But here, I mean, they made an exception because, as Goethe said, this is a theater in natural theater. The location was simply amazing. For the rest, this is a really canonical Greek theater, which means mainly acoustic. The Greek theater was something to hear more than to watch. So the main thing, the main purposes of this structure was that everyone could hear perfectly what was told down there. And it really works. I will show you. Look at it. These structures are made to keep the vibration inside, which travel around the structure and come back to you from any direction. Today it's called Dolby Surround. It's exactly the same thing. Or home theater. Like we have a theater like this at home. In fact, you can see the amplification when they use. I don't know if generally for symphonic concerts they don't use amplification. When there are popular concerts they use, but it's really minimal because here you don't need that much. But in general, you can hear people whispering. You know, if there is someone, an actor that speaks properly, yeah, you can see you hear every single word. Questions?
Why did they choose the Romans?
Because they were lighter, so easier for transportation, easier for constructions, and they were it was the bricks that was possible to build the arches. It was what made the difference. Because it's thanks to the arches that they could spread the weight of the structure much better. So they could build bigger stuff. Something like the Colosseum for the Greeks with those big blocks was impossible for them because being too heavy for columns. Because without arch, you cannot build something like that. At least another time. So it was anyway a better way to build. That was alloying, was permitting more complex building.
Do they have a water supply here?
Yes. No. Yeah, there is water. In this part of Sicily, you can see it's really green. These mountains, as well as Mount Etna, provide a lot of water. We don't live under a volcano just because we're like exciting. Yeah, when you have now sounds unbelievable, but in winter Etna is completely snow-capped.
Wow.
So that is all water that goes to our water spring, filtered by the lava rock, mineral lava.